Howlett.
I'm Melissa Coots.
And I'm Mackenzie Gamache.
Today we're talking to you about Nike Considered, getting traction on sustainability.
So our agenda for today, we're going to give you a little bit of an overview about the Nike Considered case. Then we'll go over some problems and issues that were in the case, the goal of the Corporate Responsibility VP, a SWOT analysis, motivation and rewards as learning tools, the relationship between the corporate responsibility, environmental sustainability, and the bottom line, and some improvements that we have suggested, as well as a conclusion.
So in the early 1990s, Nike came under attack for their overseas labor practices. The company received a large amount of negative press due to the working conditions and unacceptable treatment of their employees. This included forced overtime, physical and emotional and sexual abuse, and exposure to toxic chemicals and fumes without proper safety equipment. After attempting to deny knowledge of these incidents and diffuse responsibility, they started to address the allegations in a more strategic manner in the late 1990s. They began to reevaluate their internal system and how they did business when they started to see that the way they were doing business may have been encouraging the behaviors they were trying to avoid. In the shadow of this public relations nightmare, Nike began to reinvent itself and launched a number of environmental initiatives aimed at reducing their reliance on oil products, toxic chemicals, and minimizing waste. Hannah Jones started in her position as VP of Corporate Responsibility in December 2004. It was at this time and under the direction of Jones that Nike launched the Considered line of sustainable shoes. By considering what was right and doing what was right, the hope was that Nike would not need to monitor the factory workers overseas to make sure they were wearing face masks while working with solvents and other toxic materials. They would make it so the workers were using safe products for themselves and the environment.
So we discussed 3 issues presented in the case and concluded that there are 3 main problems that need to be addressed. The first being that Nike needs to collaborate extensively with its external partners in order to create more sustainable products. As it states in the case, simply focusing the efforts within Nike would not be enough to implement the Considered strategy. Nike must collaborate with all of its external stakeholders, including factories and suppliers, to create more sustainable products. The second problem is that different product categories are not implementing the Considered strategy with the same efficiency or effectiveness. Different categories were facing different barriers, such as the availability of resources, energy, and the technical options. Hannah Jones, VP of Corporate Responsibility, wanted to expand the Considered strategy to other categories, but was facing several problems with doing so. The last problem we identified in the case was the introduction of an environmental dimension to the Nike brand. The Nike brand is built around a performance standard, and introducing an environmental aspect has the potential to damage the brand and reputation due to speculations that the environmentally friendly is equal to a lesser quality. Nike needs to communicate to its retailers and consumers that its products are just as performance-based and aesthetic as before, but are also playing a part in the sustainability of the environment.
The goal of the Corporate Responsibility VP is to root corporate social responsibility deep within the DNA of every aspect of Nike's business. So how are they to do this? They do this through a number of things. First, understanding. So the VP first has to understand Nike's employees, what motivates them, what is important to them. Next, the competitors. What are the competitors doing? What values do they hold? What are some breakthroughs that they're doing? Then also, very importantly, they need to understand the corporate responsibility trends that are ever changing and always going on within the marketplace. And finally, also the supply chain. They need to understand how products move through the supply chain, understand all of the different businesses and partnerships that are involved. Next, the VP needed to create a baseline. So that they needed something that they could measure their progress against. So as they move forward and made improvements, they needed to be able to look back and see how far they've come. This led to the creation of a toolkit, and this basically just allowed the team and everyone within the organization to meet their goals. Then they needed to create value creation and collaboration. So basically, corporate responsibility helps the company to deliver returns on investments. They needed all of their business partnerships and people within the different business units to understand this and truly believe this, to see that corporate responsibility does add value if they all collaborate together. And finally, strategic planning. So basically, if they strategically plan, they're able to increase profitability, and basically that leads to sustainable growth.
So our first problem is Nike needs to collaborate extensively with external partners to create more sustainable products. In doing this, Nike's strengths for opportunities and innovation become larger because there are so many people involved in the process that understanding different parts of the process, it allows everyone to have a different intake and opinion on Nike's products. If external partners and employees of external partners understood their importance in the larger picture and why sustainability is important for them, their families, etc., they will become more engaged. If employees are more engaged, we will learn from Nike's internal employees, they become more creative, motivated, and resourceful. One of the weaknesses Nike focuses on is that in their internal partners rather than their external partners, possibly because they are so far away and are not dealt with directly. But contract workers are very important in the supply chain because they make and ship the final products. Yet, in engaging employees at all levels takes a lot of time, not to mention the rather high costs in doing this globally. Another downside is considering the cost and the extra time it takes in the factories and the longer time in the design process. The lengthy processes of creating sustainable products internally and externally is bad for both parties. Timelines need to be longer, apparel lines need to start earlier, as well as the design lines. Suppliers also didn't want to put time into Nike if there is a possibility that revenues could be cut short. Not to mention, Nike couldn't guarantee profits because they didn't know how the idea of a sustainable shoe would sell. Some opportunities for Nike, as I mentioned earlier, are innovation and strength, but also an opportunity to open doors in sustainability and the time crunch. Nike wasn't clear on their markets and what would happen to their current markets, but the synthetics, such as synthetic leather, immediately opened doors for the vegan market, eliminating leather. It also opens markets for those of green lifestyles, and I'm sure many more markets will emerge for Nike in the future, as they are very innovative and market leaders. So the biggest threat facing Nike is external partners not being on board. No suppliers means no products and no revenue, and that also affects the shareholders. The cost of making changes in production is a big threat because external partners have working equipment, and Nike's newer tools are very costly, and because of their custom shapes and sizes, they're always changing. New tools and machinery means training, increasing factory costs, which is not good for the suppliers. New machinery could imply more employees are necessary, and the pre-existing facilities may not be sufficient for the equipment or what these innovations have to offer. More oversight may be very necessary for the new technologies in order to provide specialization.
The second problem we identified was that the different product categories were not implementing considered with the same speed or effectiveness. So the SWOT analysis for problem 2 is listed in front of you. The strengths for implementing a CR strategy for considered are there would be a strategic guidelines for reaching each new level. The implementation plan would have appropriate timelines for each category, as certain shoes or products require more time to complete certain tasks, like designing. And by presenting the plan to the company and promoting the initiative, Nike would get some much needed positive PR, and the plan would lay out the reward system that was fair and consistent. Some of the weaknesses we discussed included having to adjust output expectations to accommodate timelines for more complicated categories, needing to review the considered index regularly, and monitoring and making sure the reward system is not unintentionally promoting unethical behavior. The opportunities we saw are that Nike would become a world leader in sustainable performance products as they could set the business model. They could come up with a strategy to implement the considered index for all of their products, so branch out into apparel and other equipment. And they have the opportunity to alter their timelines and allow for the processes that do take more time. Some of the threats we discussed are the potential that they will be unable to maintain their profit margins while trying to meet the index requirements, not reaching production targets due to delays or supply availability, and the potential for teams to feel the need to cut corners to meet timelines is still a possibility.
So the third problem with Nike was their revolved around including an environmental aspect into the performance-based brand. Strengths include the creation of a unified vision for the brand. With a new corporate responsibility strategy, Nike would be able to introduce their products as performance standard with sustainable initiatives. Creating a unified vision would benefit the company through profit and their reputation. With new implementation of a corporate responsibility strategy, the branding would be able to capture both parts of the Nike image. They can use their already persisting brand to introduce their new sustainable aspect. Weaknesses include the loss of customer confidence. As soon as a brand changes something that is already good to consumers, it can negatively affect the company as people are not used to the changes. The sustainability side of the Nike products needs more research and development in order to sell the idea to customers, which can take a lot of time and more costs. Green products already have a reputation for not being durable. This is a weakness as it presents challenges in gaining customer interest. Opportunities presented included the possibility of reaching a larger target market. While not catering to those who are looking for performance wear and those looking for sustainable options, Nike opens themselves up to a much larger market. They also have the ability to gain retailers with similar initiatives. They can now interest companies that want to sell performance products as well as sustainable products. Nike also has the opportunity to use innovation to streamline the process of building a sustainable product and introduce it into their other industries. Threats presented are the ability to maintain the distinct features of the different categories. Consumers are buying the specific products because they want because of the difference between different categories. If they all become too much alike, it will lose the consumer's appeal. Brand loyalty has to be kept through consistency of products, but it is threatened by changing the brand.
To get employees motivated and on board and involved, employees need to be motivated to understand their importance in the big picture. Motivated employees are more likely to cut costs and make time cuts and come up with new ideas. And overall helps the employees focus on the main goal of sustainable lines. In focusing on their goal of sustainable lines and less waste, it opens doors for the company as well as society to benefit overall. Nike did a great job of motivating employees by creating a considered index. The considered index made it easy for employees to monitor their own success in the creation process, making it easy to modify products in the design process and avoid lengthy design and creation processes. Not only do employees benefit and become more motivated by using the considered index, Nike as a whole benefits. To help the employees of Nike develop their understanding of the considered index, Nike had a question and answer session with the employees to educate them on the importance of the considered index and the impact on the environment and how to use it. After introducing the considered index in 2009, Nike met the goal of every product in the 2009 line to be in the silver range of the considered index, having a big impact on the environment and the company. Keeping employees motivated is important to Nike and the design process because One disengaged employee can delay the entire process and create a pushback, such as reversing the creation process to fix small mistakes that could have easily been avoided. Yet there were some flaws in the reward system. Nike was encouraging unethical behavior by rewarding employees even if they copied other designs to achieve a silver or bronze shoe. Other problems Nike ran into were some time